All right. Catherine, do you want to? Okay. Yep. Okay. You guys are good. Hi, my name's Rebecca Martin Fagerholm. Welcome to our part 3 Q&A, filmmaker Q&A. And I'm just so excited. First of all, Zoë Worth, who's the producer of Thelma, who I interviewed back in January with June Squibb. She is moderating this Q&A. So I'm just so honored that she's taking time during our festival run to talk to our filmmakers. And joining us is Katherine Taylor and Mary Tilden, directors of Fern, Bridget Frances Harris, Places of Worship, Erin Lovett, The Knowing, and Olivia Haller, Subtext. All of these people, but Erin, are showing their films tomorrow at the Music Box at 7:30 and 9:30. So we're actually sold out of tickets. But, you know, yes, we will be promoting and everything like that. So if you guys all want to come up now. All right. So Zoë, I'll have you take it away and then I'll turn my camera and sound off.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for having me. And it's so great to meet all of you guys. I loved watching all of the shorts and I'm excited for audiences to get to see them on the big screen. I know a lot of you have been doing festival runs already, but the Music Box will be sure to be an awesome screening. So yeah, I mean, just as an icebreaker, I thought it might be a fun question, kind of a leading question to hear, you know, maybe you can introduce yourself, say the name of your film, and also what your favorite shot or image or sequence from your short was and why. And whoever wants to start, maybe the Fern ladies can kick it off.
Yeah, hi. I'm Katherine Taylor. I co-directed and wrote Fern with Mary, and our film is actually only 3 shots. It's 3 long takes, and so my favorite is the one where I'm chasing her down the street, talking about what a good friend I am.
Was there dirt on the floor at that time or not yet?
Yeah, it was after
the spill
falls apart. Yeah.
Hi, and I'm Mary Tilden. I made Fern with Katherine. And yeah, I think that's my favorite too. I think my favorite is in the Fern. I don't want to give it away though.
Oh yeah. Do you think people will see this after? I think people will see this after they've watched your films. Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, okay, then I think my favorite part is in the Fern Falls because every time I watch it, I'm always like, like sympathetically react.
Definitely. I definitely had that reaction. I was at the edge of my seat when that fern fell. That was hilarious. Thanks, you guys. And Erin, how about you?
Yeah, mine's a little bit of a spoiler too, but one of my favorite shots is actually it has to do with the backstory of a woman in the film, and it's we pull back, she's in a car, it looks like she's just kind of waiting in her car, and then we pull back to kind of reveal a younger couple, you know, embracing and having an intimate moment, and I just thought it was like a nice way to kind of tell her backstory.
Definitely. I remember that. Oh yeah. Someone's writing in. That was my favorite too. Yeah, that was a wonderful shot. Bridget, do you want to jump in with yours?
Yeah, I love that shot, Erin. I remember being especially delighted by it. I'm Bridget. I directed and wrote and co-produced Places of Worship. And my favorite is more of a personal just like the way of getting the shot is the shot in the music box where the movie theater, the scene where she goes into the movie theater. And I think part of it is just like I'm at the music box all the time, and it's just one of my favorite places in the world. And so it feels really special to be screening at the music box, even though it's in the little theater. While we shot there, it feels very Inception. So I just feel really proud that we were able to get that. And yeah, it's a nice memorial of my favorite place, kind of.
Those shots were awesome and really looked like a place of worship when the first time you see her walking down through into the theater. I was very impressed with the kind of juxtaposition there. I loved those shots. Olivia, how about you?
Yeah, I'm always too afraid to give spoilers away, but one of my favorite. Oh, so I'm Olivia Haller. I wrote, produced, and acted in Subtext. I did not direct it. My director is Erin Thomas, who couldn't be here today because she's a working director. But there's one shot in the film that's kind of like a going back in time moment. And it's sort of like it happens when the two main characters like clink their glasses, and then there's kind of like a camera spin back in time motion, and we didn't really totally know how we were going to get it. And I think my DP like ended up sort of like rigging the camera to like a lazy Susan, and like had like had it on a spinning plate. And I remember like we were all kind of nervous watching her like on the ladder doing it, and we're like, well, if it doesn't work, we can at least like we'll submit it to Shitty Rigs and we'll like get on their Instagram because it was just like kind of jerry rigged, but it ended up working out. It was great.
That's awesome. Well, cool. So let's see. I wrote down a couple of others. I would love to ask you guys, this is a question I'm sure you guys have been asked a lot, but maybe you could tell us about the personal inspiration beside for the movie or any kind of artistic, artworks, films, anything that was an extra special inspiration for you in the conceiving and making of your film. Anyone that wants to jump in with that would be great.
I can start. Yeah, I grew up very Catholic in Las Vegas, Nevada, which I find to be the most juxtaposing of forces. And so I knew I wanted to tell the story about this young girl who grew up in the church. And I just found myself thinking about all the shame, all the sexual shame I've been facing my whole life. And so instead of making it all like, oh, womp sad, I was just like, oh, I think this could be very surreal and a little funny. And I drew a lot of inspiration from all of the religious cartoons I watched growing up. Like they would always tell like Bible stories, but like via cartoons, and they were always like the strangest animation. And so I remember watching a bunch of those when I was like writing it and being like, oh wow, like some of these animations are so elaborate.
Awesome. I've never seen those, but now I'm really curious too. Anyone else want to talk about the
I'll jump in. So my film's about infertility and the internal pressures women feel, external and internal pressures women and couples experience. And it comes from a very personal place. I went through my own journey with this, and it was very difficult, and it was hard to kind of get to a place where I was ready to write about it until I started talking to kind of friends about what I was going through, and then learning that they too had gone through something similar. And I realized like it was far from alone. There were a lot of people in my life who were dealing with this, and I love horror films, and my background is more documentary. I've done a lot of documentary work, but I really wanted to make a horror film, and because I love the idea of like taking something and diving deeper and being a little more metaphorical and not so on the nose. And so I've watched a million horror films, and I took inspiration from films like Don't Look Now. Like I really love the use of red in that film, and I thought it would really work well with like the stained glass and the blood, and just kind of everything that connects to reproduction. And yeah, so that's about it.
Well, it was a wonderful film. I'm scared of horror films, and I did watch yours, and it was scary, but not in that kind of nightmarish way, just in a
Yeah.
lifelike way. And I definitely connected to it. And you are not alone. I'm really happy that you're putting a very creative spin on this for us to think about from a different angle.
Yeah.
Any other inspiration?
Yeah, I'll talk about ours. Katherine and I wrote this about basically just this awkward walk we had when she moved away from Chicago. And so we just wanted to make something together, and we were talking. She brought up how weird that walk was, and I honestly didn't remember it that well, but we thought that maybe it would be fun to reenact it and sort of make it more absurd, just sort of like bring some of the stuff that we were feeling at the time to the surface, and make it funny. Which, those things being like, I felt really sad she was leaving. I felt at the time like very abandoned because a lot of my friends were moving out of Chicago. And she was very excited for her new journey. So I think like having that happen in an adult relationship can be really complicated, and it's hard to navigate those big shifts in adult friendships.
Did you bring her a gift for real?
No.
No, but
But she was staying at my
time.
house.
Cool.
And what's funny is that she wasn't actually leaving. I was leaving. I was going on a trip. I was going on a trip, and she was going to stay at my house until she moved to LA. So it was the last time we were seeing each other, but I guess in reality, she was going to be there for a few more days, and I was going to be going.
Gotcha. Cool. Subtext, Olivia?
Yeah, actually similarly to Mary, the inspiration also sort of came from like having like I was new to LA, and I was going on this sort of a coffee tour and trying to like make new friends but also find a job, and I got connected with people that had been like writers and writers assistants and filmmakers, and I just was sort of like trying to make friends but also trying to say like sort of why, like what I had done and why it was worth talking to me and why I was impressive, and like just found like the more that I actually was just like, here's what I'm stressed about, and like here, like what's your sign, like what do you like to do, what's your favorite food, where do you want to get tacos, and it was just like the more I was actually open about like my vulnerabilities and just was trying to make friends, like the better connections that I made. And so I kind of, the subtext is about two people on a first date that speak their subtext out loud, but the other character doesn't hear it, only the audience hears it. And then later more things happen, but it just, I wanted to sort of explore like what would happen if we just said what was on our minds and what we actually wanted to say, and like how do we, but even especially like as we get older, I think it's like I feel this like desire to be known in a shorter amount of time, and just like I just want to not start from square one all the time when I'm meeting new people. So it kind of just went from there.
Well, it was super creative, and I loved that whole conceit. I was curious to ask you in particular if, and it sounds like the idea for just exploring the subtext part came before kind of that twist where it goes. So the kind of basic framework came to you before the larger twist?
That was always a part of it, actually. Because well, this is a spoiler, but essentially, as I was sort of conceiving that and writing the short, the event in Uvalde had happened, the mass shooting at the school in Uvalde, and I couldn't stop thinking about it and how just it's becoming more commonplace for people to have firsthand experience with mass shootings, and or like even have been in the area or know someone that was in a shooting, and just like any given large crowd, there could be someone that has trauma from that, and it's not even normalized. Like we don't really talk about it or address it, and I feel like this is such an epidemic that's happening. So I wanted to sort of also, so like these two characters both have something that they are afraid to show people, and afraid to sort of like they want to move on from it, and they're trying to make connection despite it, but like by allowing that to be a part of their connection is how they're actually able to move on.
That was, I thought it was wonderful. And I'm hearing confirmation that we will say spoilers are in this conversation.
All right,
So,
great.
and this will be played and promoted after your films are screened. When the male character in the film is looking at the door, I didn't know why he was looking at the door, and it really was an effective way to make you think, okay, you don't really know what's going on with everybody. And yeah, I thought it was just a wonderfully creative way to look at a new relationship and a date. I'd love to ask everybody about their favorite part of the filmmaking process. And maybe you could answer that in general terms, like I like to act, or and then specifically with this movie, were they the same role, or did this film bring out something different, some unique kind of interest or particular favorite corridor in the filmmaking process? Whoever wants to start.
I can start. I was first and foremost an actor, but I've started performing a lot of my own work in years recent. And I think I think writing this with Mary was my favorite part of it. And then getting to bring that to life was my favorite part. I really enjoyed that.
That's fun. Mary, was that also your favorite part or no?
Yes. I mean, I really loved doing that. I was trying to think if there was like a particular, I guess something that surprised me that I really liked was collaborating with our composer.
Nice.
That just because we knew it needed some underscoring, but you know, it's like kind of it's just a funny little thing, you know? So I didn't know, I wasn't thinking that it needed like really intense underscoring. It just needed a little, like a light bit. But it's amazing how much just that light underscoring like lifts up so much of the text and the moments. So that was just a really cool thing, because that's just not a tool I've ever really thought of having in my director arsenal. I always forget about it. And so now I'm looking forward to my next projects, like thinking about what the underscoring will be beforehand, so that it just helps inform, you know, how I direct.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful whole huge chapter for you now. And the score in your film totally made a difference to the watch. And yeah, I relate to that being, I don't know, an afterthought that then can change the whole course of how you experience something.
Yeah, especially since I tend to focus on very like character driven, sort of dialogue heavy comedies. So yeah, I'm not thinking as much like visually, I feel like, or audibly orally as a lot of directors I really admire. So I'm excited to like see how my style can blend with underscoring too.
Awesome. Anyone? Bridget, Olivia?
I can kind of piggyback off of what Katherine said, because I sort of had the opposite experience where I have an acting background, but I really wanted to like produce a short that I wrote. And then I didn't intend to write it for myself to act in, but then we did a bunch of script workshops before we filmed it, and I was kind of just like, Erin, I really want to just act in it so that I can show you what I'm trying to do and like what I mean by writing this, because it was sort of this style of like your body language is saying one thing but your dialogue says something else. And I found the process of like acting in something that I wrote really informative, because there'd be a moment in the scene where my character sort of felt like she wants the date to go well and she's going to do something that's active and is driving the date forward, but then the line that I gave her was like sort of negative and defeated, and it didn't drive the scene forward. So I was like, oh, then I need to change that line, because that's like stalling the scene and doesn't feel real. So it was actually like a cool process to kind of be involved in that way. And then on set, I just was very much like, I have to be an actor, I need a great line producer. Like that's going to focus on that. So I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I would.
That's awesome. Yeah, it didn't even occur to me that, of course, your whole kind of conceit and way in here has this reverse engineering aspect that would be really almost trippy as an actor, as when you're just getting the lines. So that's interesting how the writing and acting were informing each other in kind of this twilight space. That's unusual. Bridget or Erin?
Yeah, I really do echo the sentiments of Mary and Olivia and Katherine, like being actors, you know, I am an actor as well. And I like, to me, the most informative thing and just kind of peeled back the curtain for me was the casting process. This was the first time I went through a more formal casting process, saw a lot of people, saw a lot of people I didn't know. And I just was, it brought me a lot of peace as an actor, being like, wow, I saw so many amazing people and they just weren't right for the role. And so it made me feel better. It made me feel better that like there's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't know as actors. And it gave me a lot more grace for the casting process. And just, you know, I think that it showed me that like when I do auditions, the goal is to do a great audition. You know, I'm not going to always be right for the role. And like, people will remember you in the same way that I remembered some people who auditioned for my film where I was just like, you're just not it. But like, I value your talent and I see the work you put into it. So that was just super eye-opening for me. But also, yeah, the score, Mary, like everything you were saying, I'm like, wow, I feel like I completely neglected that until now. And I'm like, whoa, wow, what if I had thought about that before I made the movie? Instead of just like, okay, well, let's stick something on at the end. Like, wow, you can actually think about it before.
Yeah, because like I feel
Yes.
it's very it of course you come up with visual references beforehand, you know, whether you're making a deck for other people to see or just, you know, while you're writing it or whatever, you have visual references. But I realized, oh, I really need to have these like audio references because it's so weird to get to the end of the process and have a composer and then they're like, can you give me an example? And you're like, I mean, me and Katherine were just like kind of humming. We were like, and like our composer was had so much grace that that's what we were just sort of like, and it's like,
Well, even from
it
a
would be great if we had some sort of example.
But even from like a pace standpoint, you know, being like, oh, wow, what are some things that I can imagine, you know, even in the editing process, I think that next time around, I would definitely go like, wow, actually, I think that needs to be a much sooner conversation than I had anticipated.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
One thing, because composing was definitely something that I had so much fun with, and sound design into knowing. You know, I come from a documentary world and we do a lot of it's just very instrumental but this felt very collaborative. I worked with a composer here in Los Angeles named Ball, and I sent him the script to see if he would be at all be interested because I really wanted something more experimental, something like tonal and eerie. And he sent me a song. The song that plays at the end of the credits is actually the first thing he composed. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. And it definitely helped inform the filmmaking. And we had so much fun collaborating and putting in like little Easter eggs. The first thing you hear is actually the heartbeat of my son, who I ended up getting pregnant along the way.
Wow.
And it draws you in with the sonogram of his heartbeat. And like I contributed some whispering in Swedish actually, so we kind of like mixed it up and like so it's nondescript, and there was just a lot of like little fun things that we did together.
That's awesome. And it's so cool to hear that you worked on that even before filmmaking, because it must have just set such a tone.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you guys have time for just one more, I know we only have a couple minutes left, but maybe you guys could share just what you hope an audience will kind of take away and see in your film. And we can close up from there.
I'll go. I just hope they laugh. I think that's what we set out to make, was a funny film. about friendship, and I hope people think it's funny. That's really all I hope.
That's great. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'll say that I think if people leave subtext with the thought that like you just never know what's going on with someone else and that we all kind of have things that we're working through, that would be a good message.
I feel like mine is tricky because I don't want to impose anything on anyone, right? Like I think that everyone's gonna have their own experience. Everyone comes from their own lived experience. So I'm actually more interested in the people who don't like my movie or won't like it. And I guess I pose the question of like asking yourself why, and like if you're uncomfortable, why are you uncomfortable? You know, my film is provocative in a few ways. And so I'm just interested in people reflecting upon why they might feel a certain way.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of how I feel, but I also am coming this with like, you know, I want people to recognize how complicated the journey of reproduction is, and that it's not just black and white. And like, that's something we should really be thinking about as we have politicians and all these people trying to get involved in women's bodies and rights. And so I guess I did come with that, but I didn't want to hit people over the head with that in the film. I really wanted them to kind of to provoke some kind of thoughts and conversation.
I think it does, and I think it will. And thank you all so much. Thanks for having me.
And
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to say thank you for, it's an honor to screen your films. And I keep saying this at each Q&A, but I do feel like we're becoming this family in a way. I hope that's not weird, but it's just like, I love it. People are coming back with their films, and people who've shown their films are getting involved in other ways. So thank you for being here. We have our last in-person screenings tomorrow night at the Music Box, and yeah, I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yay.